My objective tonight and over the next few minutes is going to be to put some things in perspective for all of us. I want to make sure that we all recognize that we have a great opportunity before us to make not just America, but West Virginia great again. We have this opportunity because for the first time in a long time, we have a president who intends to put America first. And this opportunity is even greater than it would otherwise be because the Republicans have gained control of the West Virginia Senate and the West Virginia House. And these Republicans have passed pro-business legislation, including the dream that many businessmen of West Virginia have had, right to work. I am very proud to have begun the resurrection of the Republican Party in 2006 at a time when no one thought a Republican could win by funding the placement of a Republican on every statewide ballot in West Virginia. I did so at a time when people were saying the Republican Party would never be strong in West Virginia again, and most people were wrong. The opportunity President Trump and the Republican legislature have given is an opportunity that, as West Virginians, we cannot afford to miss. It is an opportunity that may not be there very long, and it is an opportunity that may never come again. It's an opportunity that is critically important, not just for us, but for our children and for our grandchildren. It's an opportunity that is not only important to West Virginia, it is also important to all Americans. Lifetime politicians do not even recognize this opportunity, and so they certainly will not grab hold of it. Why? Because they are focused on their own self-interest and they have no prior experience in West Virginia at creating prosperity. We all know that. Our West Virginia politicians will not lead us. They may not even follow, but rather they may just simply watch the parade go by. Or even worse, like you saw in the commercial and like Manchin did, in voting against the tax cut, they may try to destroy the opportunity itself, fearing someone besides them might get credit. You can be sure that Senator Manchin, Schumer, and Pelosi do not want President Trump to get credit for turning America around. Most politicians are so blind by their self-interest that they fail to see the great responsibility they have. It's a responsibility they have to everyone, every voter, every child, every citizen in West Virginia. It's a responsibility that they, in fact, owe to America itself. It's a responsibility which politicians have that includes the responsibility to do the very best possible job they can do, and yet they seem not to care. It includes the responsibility to place their own agendas and their own self-interest behind the well-being of those of you who have elected them. And it also includes placing the interest of their political party behind the interest of America. Senator Manchin has failed to adhere to any of these most basic responsibilities. If we are going to grab onto this opportunity to advance West Virginia and to advance our country, it is very simple. We are going to have to replace Senator Joe Manchin. But we're also going to have to do something else, and that is we're going to have to work together, and it's that simple. Joe must go, and we as West Virginians must bury our petty differences and work together. Working together, again, it won't be difficult because most everyone in this room, and surprising to many of you, most every West Virginian, share very similar opinions as to the issues facing West Virginia and facing America. And we also share similar opinions of how to deal with those issues. Later, I will tell you my views on some specific challenges that we have, and I look forward to hearing what your views of them are. But unfortunately, many of the media and most politicians will question whether what I just said is true. It won't come as any surprise that the political establishment will want people to believe that I do not agree with average West Virginians. What they do not know is that I was not born a CEO. And I have very much in common with all West Virginians. They do not know, they being the politicians, do not know me, and they do not listen to the voters. And they actually think I'm a fictional character, the one that they have and their liberal friends have made up over the past 30 years. Guys like Snidely Whiplash and the Dark Lord of Coal. But you can be sure that the Don Blankenship you read about in the Charleston Gazette and that you hear about on WSAZ is not a real person. I don't know who he is. He is the result of liberals listening only to one another. He is the fragment of their imagination, and he is the result of the old saying that if you tell a lie often enough, people will believe it. But the truth is that you and the real Don Blankenship and the great majority of West Virginians agree on most every issue, and we all want the same things. In fact, I want to review some of those things, some of those issues, and see how many of them West Virginians and those of us in this room agree with. Personally, I believe many politicians are corrupt and out of touch with most Americans. How many of you agree with that? It's unanimous, right? Sometimes I even think that the DC in Washington stands for the District of Corruption rather than the District of Columbia. I first thought I would call it Drama City, but I'm sure you all sometimes feel that way as well. They seem focused on things that have no true meaning to most of us. I do not believe that any of us in this room, though, feel, for example, that is the role of our government to give our jobs to China. Let me ask you, do anybody in this room thinks that one of the roles of our federal government is to give our jobs to China? No. They all do it. Nearly all of us believe that illegal means illegal, and an illegal immigrant is illegal. And we believe that people should come to America using the legal process required to do so. We all agree, right? Okay, so I'm 3 for 3 so far. We do believe America we do not believe America should have sanctuary cities. And we particularly do not believe that Charleston, West Virginia should be one of them, as some politicians are suggesting. We all agree, right? Joe Manchin has voted for using our tax dollars to pay for abortions. Maybe not everybody in the room agrees, but do most of us agree that we shouldn't pay taxes to pay for abortions? Okay. Most of us in this room and most West Virginians agree on 90% of the issues and on 90% of the solutions to those issues. We agree, I'm sure, that boys, no matter how they're dressed, should not use girls' bathrooms. Most of us, in fact, can't even fathom how that can be debated or be a legal issue. We agree that excessive regulations created by President Obama destroyed the coal industry and the jobs it provided. We should not forget that Joe Manchin supported both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Do we agree that we should not forget, come Election Day, that Senator Manchin supported Obama and Hillary Clinton? Okay. I think we all agree, going back to that responsibility, that Senator Manchin has ignored his responsibility to us, to you, and to all West Virginians. And we agree that he did so, as I said in the first part of this sentence, due to his own self-interest. He first thought that Hillary was certain to get elected and that he would certainly get a cabinet position. He then tried to beg himself into a cabinet position, and then he tried to promote himself as the great compromiser. But you can't drain a swamp with compromise. Now, I personally believe that we should roll back the regulations that have destroyed our jobs and get our people back to work. Do you agree? I believe that we all love our country. We all believe the United States Congress should always do what's in the best interest of our country. And I believe we should not prop up other countries while we let America crumble. Do we all agree? See, I can build my platform in this room just making sure y'all agree. But a strong United States of America is good for the world, and like they say on an airplane flight, you have to put your mask on first before you start putting someone else's mask on. And we have too many problems to be trying to fix the problems of the world. We have to help ourselves first, and then we can do more for the world. In West Virginia, our education system ranks near the bottom, if not on the bottom every year. And I believe this has to be fixed. Do we all agree to that? We lead the nation in drug overdose deaths. In fact, one of our opponents in the Republican primary is from the city that gets the most publicity for that problem. And this has to stop. We have to stop drug companies from feeding us and our children drugs as if they were candy. Do we all agree? Again, most of us agree on all these issues, and so do most West Virginians, surprisingly, whether they be Republican, Democrat, or independent. But someone might ask, what about the poor? Here again, the news media and the political establishment would have you believe that I, Don Blankenship, could not care less about the poor, that I don't even understand our state's poorest citizens. They might tell you that I could not care less about the elderly. Certainly they would tell you that about union workers or the unemployed or the homeless. But I do care, and I know that you care. And I think that we agree that the poor are as important as the rich or the workers. And the answer as to why I care is not a complex one, but one that I think I should tell you about. It's because, like most of you, I grew up in West Virginia. I have seen the ugliness of poverty. I agree that the poor are important because even some former coal miners who worked for Massey are now among the poor. So are many of the widows of coal miners past because their pension plans have not kept up with inflation. And I love all coal miners and all people who are relatives of coal miners. And you may not know that I worked in a union mine as a union miner, and therefore I understand and care about them as well. But I, in fact, watched as Cecil Roberts not only destroyed employers, but also destroyed the United Mine Workers Union and caused union mine workers to lose their jobs. I had a front row seat to observe Cecil's self-interest policies, his inflexibility, and his putting out of work miners and certainly placing the retiree fund in great jeopardy and putting widows in poverty. I want you to know that growing up, I said the Pledge of Allegiance before entering the classroom, as most of you did, and just as we did tonight. I sang God Bless America, and so did nearly everyone in this room. I sang, Oh, those West Virginia hills, how majestic and how grand, just like you did. And I sang America the Beautiful, and I sang that old rugged cross, just like all of you did. I have been around West Virginia coal miners most all of my life. I put gasoline in their cars at the family gas station when I was just 10 years old. I played baseball in the coalfield leagues. And a little something most of you may not know is that Republicans can be union members. Did you know, for example, that John L. Lewis was a Republican? And did you know that his father was a Republican? I went to Sunday school most Sundays, just like most of you did. I watched my mother give old shoes to the poorest kids in town, which is pronounced DeLorme, by the way, Fred. And it's 10 miles from Sprague. And I watched her give food to the poorest of the kids in our area when they were hungry. So there are many, many reasons that I am concerned about the poor and that I agree with them on many issues. But perhaps a little story would help you appreciate why I have compassion for the less fortunate. You might not know that I once had to choose between whether I would buy food or gasoline when I was working in Chattanooga, Tennessee for very low wages. And I made the only choice that my stomach would allow me to make. So I ate food and ran out of gas. And I understand that. I understand what it is to make choices. People are having to make choices between, as I read the other day on the internet, whether they pay their power bill or whether they buy food. It cannot be that way. It need not be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. And it's that way because our politicians do not listen, do not have compassion, and do not have the capability or the experience to create prosperity. But when I ran out of gas, I had at least an old car. You see, I am not saying that my family was poor by the standards of many others. We had all that we needed, but I know that at times things can be tough. And I know that times are tough for a lot of people in West Virginia. I know and I have compassion for the poor because they need our compassion and they need our help. You see, I also know what it is to pick blackberries before daylight in July in order to have blackberries for breakfast before daylight in January. And let me share a little story so that you'll know I'm a West Virginian, and that because I understand the language. Working in this gas station, I was about 12 years old, and a customer pulled in at the pumps, and as Mom always did, she pushed me and encouraged me in her own way to hurry to put gas in the car. When I got to the car, the lady said, "Fill it up with ethyl and bring me a soft drink." I was stunned. I ran back into the store and I said, "Mom," she said, "fill it up with ethyl and bring her a soft drink. What do I do?" To which she said, "Hurry, fill it up with high test and take her a pop." So I understand the language. Now, the media and others will tell you I'm not a West Virginian, but the language of West Virginia includes the word pop. And even though, I know the language, I admit to having homes in more places than West Virginia, but I can tell you that my heart is in West Virginia. When the media says Don doesn't understand or that he cannot relate, you can be sure that that is not the truth. The truth is that you and I and most West Virginians share common bonds. All of us share strong bonds, whether we are rich or whether we are poor or whether we are somewhere in between. We all root for the thundering herd and we watch the mountaineers. The things that bond us include the way we were raised. And I said raised, I didn't say reared, as they would in Nevada. They include what we were taught. These bonds include what we learned to be most important when we were in our formative years. That is faith, family, and America. It is the news media and the politicians that do not understand us. It is not that we do not understand each other. We are all West Virginians, and we are all proud Americans. In fact, West Virginia is the most loyal state in the nation to our military and to America. And most of us are concerned that our country has leaned so far to the left that it is about to fall over. So when the media and the career politicians claim that I am not a West Virginian, you can leave here tonight and tell them that you know better. Tell them we all agree that what Ronald Reagan said was true. The government is not the solution to the problem. The government is the problem. Those of us in this room know that what a huge problem our country has. I don't want you to miss that I used the Trump word, huge problem. And it's a bigger problem than Joe Manchin and the other candidates can ever deal with. It's no laughing matter that our own government has destroyed our jobs. It's not a laughing matter that they have destroyed and damaged our pride. And in many cases, they've tore our families apart. Our family members have had to move elsewhere to find work, whether it be Tennessee or Chicago or Charlotte or elsewhere. And our government has thereby scattered our families all over the country. Worse, they have done so in order to, in many cases, to line their own pockets and to make life better, not for Americans, but for the citizens of other countries. They call it the trade policy. President Trump is right. It's time to put Americans first. Do we all agree with President Trump that it's time to put America first? Once the politicians have finished saying that I'm not a West Virginian and that I'm not experienced or whatever, they will say that I have never been in public life, and therefore I am not qualified to be the senator. But this causes me to remember another Ronald Reagan comment, which many of you in the room are old enough to remember. Reagan was debating Walter Mondale, and the monitor or the person asking the questions asked Reagan if he was too old to be elected president of the United States. His response was that, yes, I am older than my opponents, but I will not make their youth and inexperience an issue in this campaign. My answer as to whether I have the experience to serve in the U.S. Senate is somewhat similar to Reagan's experience question. I will not make my opponent's inexperience at creating jobs and building up our communities an issue in this campaign. I simply intend to do the job. One thing you can be sure of, that there's no one running in any party in this race that has the experience I have at creating jobs and prosperity in West Virginia. At one time, we had 20,000 people on our medical coverage. Nor have any of these politicians shown my compassion. Show me one that has spent $5 million of their own money in donations and in getting rid of the food tax and in stopping the encumbrance of the teachers' pension fund of a $5.5 billion bond so that the supporters of Joe Manchin could get fees for selling the bonds upwards of $300 million. Working together, placing our state and our country first, we can do great things for ourselves and for our state and for our country. But most importantly, we can do great things for our children and for the poor children of other families. We can move up the ladder in every category that is good, and we can move down the ladder in every category that is bad. Those same values which bond us together will get us to a better day. You see, I was born in a poor house. I was raised by a single mom, just like 40% of West Virginia children are today. For the first 8 years of my life, I used an outhouse. And I was tickled at 19 years of age to get a job in a coal mine because I could bathe in a warm bathhouse that did not have a coal stove. Eventually, after the poorhouse, the outhouse, and the bathhouse, I was invited and ate at the private dining table at the White House. And just last year, I lived in California in the big house. No other candidate can claim to have been born in the poorhouse, used an outhouse, bathed in the bathhouse, and been to the White House and stayed in the big house. I guarantee you. And not only did I stay there, I was the one and only misdemeanor with 2,000 felons, including about 1,800 illegal immigrants. So I know what the government can do to us, and I know that they are the problem. They are not the solution. You can tell your friends and all others that I have seen the good and I have seen the bad, and that I know the difference when I see it, and I have proven over and over again that I can deal with both. The other candidates in this race either are or want to become lifetime politicians. My only goal is to help make West Virginia and our country great again. For me, it's a bucket list item to help create jobs and prosperity for West Virginians. I am not from New Jersey or New York. I do not need the Senate job for my personal finances, and I do not need it for my ego. I do not intend to join the swamp, but rather I intend to help flush it. It has never been my goal to be a politician. In fact, people that know me would think it's impossible. But I do know how important it is to improve our economy and grow our job market. I understand the pain that lack of jobs causes. And I know that it's important that our country change for the better in order for the future of our state and our children to be better. I know I can get the job done. I worked for 35 years and never failed to get the promotion in front of me. I am a Republican, and you can tell your union friends just like John L. Lewis was. I have worked diligently over the years to develop and grow the Republican Party because I knew that the liberals were taking over the Democratic Party, and I knew that liberalism is just another step toward failure. I know it is bad for our state, for its workers, and for our children. And I, as I mentioned earlier, have spent a lot of money in order to lead the fight to defeat the most anti-business judge in America, Warren McGraw. Why did I do that? Because I knew that business would not come to West Virginia so long as we had the most liberal state Supreme Court in the country, no matter how many signs that we hung that said we're open for business. And I led an effort to defeat Joe Manchin's risky bond that would have put West Virginia in debt. And I funded a campaign to eliminate the food tax for both the rich and the poor, even though I buy all my groceries in Kentucky. And that act alone, on which I spent a couple $1 million, I guess, Greg, saves West Virginians $200 million a year in food tax. No one thought that any of these efforts, whether it be the bond or whether it be electing Republicans to the Senate and the House, or whether it be the food tax, would survive or would be successful. But they all were successful, and they all were helpful to West Virginia. They were successful because they were the right thing to do, and because West Virginians agreed with me. The greatest fear of the politicians is, of course, that they will agree with me in this election. The greatest fear of the politicians is that you will send me to Washington because they know that, in fact, I will work hard for you to flush their swamp. Note that I say their swamp, a swamp that is partially owned by Senator Manchin, a corrupt swamp that Senator Manchin's friends helped create, a swamp that friends of his, such as Senator Schumer, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton, helped create. I hope that I have made the point that you and I are not that much different. I may leave here tonight in a little fancier car, and I may get back and forth places faster than you do, but we come from the same place, and I have not forgotten. But I also hope that you understand that Senator Manchin failed you and that he has supported those that destroyed our communities. He could not have done more wrong for us. And unlike Senator Manchin, I do not believe that the federal government is the answer to our problems. And unlike Senator Manchin, all of us in this room do not only share values and positions on issues, we share dreams. Dreams for our children and for our communities and for our neighbors to have bright futures. I commit to you that I will work hard to make our dreams come true. And that if Congress wants to cut your taxes again, I promise I will vote for it. I cannot believe it. How can anyone vote against cutting everybody that voted for him's taxes? You can be sure that I will not participate in the corruption nor in the drama in D.C. I have been victimized too many times by that corruption to participate in it. And I will do all that I can to help make West Virginia great again. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to address a few specific issues very quickly before questions and answers, and then I want to hear your views as well. But let me add that if you have a computer and you check the internet, if you go on donblankenship.com and scroll down to a video titled Reg Session, REGCESSION, you will see that I had the views, and in fact you all had the views, that Trump used to get himself elected president long before Trump came on the scene. We have agreed in West Virginia, and Reg Session will show you the same issues, illegal immigration, trade policy, and so forth, has to be changed. But on trade policy, it's very simple. The trade policy has to be fair to American workers, and something the enviros don't understand. It has to be considerate of the environment. The EPA cannot claim that by destroying American jobs, which are in factories and mines that are being environmentally conscious, and transferring those jobs to China, that they're saving the world from climate change. That has to stop. China burned 800 million tons of coal in 1980. U.S. burned about 820. Today, it may shock you. The United States burns under 800 million tons. The Chinese, instead of 800 million tons, burn 4.5 billion tons. And your government tries to tell you that CO2 emissions are going from the United States are going to overheat the world. They have grown their volume of coal production by 3.7 billion tons while we've been going backward. The trade policy is an effort to make Wall Street rich and Main Street poor. Can you believe you're hearing that from a CEO? I spoke at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce board meeting one time, and I told them that if you don't change your views on immigration and trade policy, I didn't say this, I said some guy like, but I should have just at that time said you're going to get Donald Trump as president. But what I said is you're going to get Archie Bunker as president. And I think we probably have that right now. I call Donald Trump as Archie Bunker with $1 billion. And that's what the U.S. Chamber of Commerce deserved, because the name is a misnomer. They're not the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, they're the World Chamber of Commerce. And they've sacrificed Main Street America for the profits. And to give you one quick idea, and I'm digressing here for a minute, Roman, what should happen, you can invest, and I see Jim Bunn sitting there, you can invest in a green fund, you can invest in all kinds of funds. We should be able to invest in an American fund. An American fund should be made up of companies that show and are transparent about how many workers in America they have, how many American taxes they pay, how much of their capital spending is in America. Then we would know which companies we should be oftentimes buying from and which companies we should be investing in. But anyway, the trade policy has to consider more than just making the big companies and the Dow Jones average wealthy. Education. I believe we have to do away with Common Core. And I think we got to get back to traditional. I will not go as far as the fact that you should be taught to write. I personally believe you should. But I'm amazed at how the education system has evolved. And I fear, quite frankly, that the union dominance of the teachers is a problem. But the bottom line is, whatever the problem is, we have to empower our teachers to teach, and we have to incentivize them to increase West Virginia student test scores. On our higher education, thank you. At the higher education level in our colleges, most of you are probably not aware, but you would be appalled at how few of the kids in these Ivy League schools and so forth are Americans. We have taught the Chinese and the rest of the world about capitalism and then abandoned capitalism ourselves. But we have to admit more Americans and fewer foreigners and more of our children and less foreign children to our universities, which are top in the world. Illegal immigration, another issue. As I said earlier, illegal means illegal, and that's not complicated. A wall or something similar does need to be built. I've crossed the Mexican border a number of times. I have another experience that no other politician has. I was a roommate with a coyote. A coyote is a person that helps illegals get across the border at Taft Prison. So I know how you do that. I also know how to stop it. I also know how to steal your identity, and I know how to stop it. It's one tip on that is be careful when you buy your gas at the gas station with a gas card. It's one of their main targets. They just come in at night, block the view from the station, and then they take a little device and put it in the gas pump, and they come back a couple of weeks and get it out, and lo and behold, they know more about you than you know about yourself. So they're pretty good at it, matter of fact. But it's unfortunate, by the way, that there's a lot of people in prison. And most, the United States has 2.1 million people in prison. It's a higher percentage of any civilized nation in the world. One of the reasons is the length of the sentences. But one of the reasons is that anytime there's a crisis, people go to prison. The explosion was one minor example, but the savings and loan crisis, the bank crisis from a few years ago, when you have an explosion at BP, they send people to prison. They think that somebody has to go to prison, and there's guys in there that, one guy that I was roommate with for a while had started a apartment development, and the bank that he had the construction loan from went bankrupt, and he couldn't get another bank because the banks weren't loaning any money. And he had represented to people that, it would be a successful apartment complex. Did he get probation, a year in jail, 5 years in jail? No, 10 years in prison. It's incredible because, what was incredible about it? There was no complaining. The people who invested did not have an issue. Just like in my case, they tried to put me in prison for life for a letter to the Securities and Exchange Commission and to the public saying that the letter was untrue, but no one in the SEC and no shareholder ever complained about it. They did put me in prison for a year for a willful violation at a coal mine that never had a willful violation in its 17 years of existence. It's It's all designed around causing the government to look like they care, that they care about bank failures, they care about the people who are damaged in explosions, they care about the people that lost their money in investment. It has nothing to do with whether the person they're charging is guilty or not. But immigrant applicants, going back to the wall, immigrant applicants for the entrance into the United States should, in my opinion, be treated much like job applicants. They should have the principles that match those things which made America great, and those should be the first ones in line. Those that do not have American principles, that have a criminal record, or that cannot contribute to what we need in this country, need to be turned away at the border. Now, on children's poverty, I believe American children have more than a right to be born. We have a right to life. As Fred said in the introduction, I have donated a lot of money to Right to Life. I believe in it. But whether you believe in right to life or not, when a child is born, he has a right to a life. He has a right. He has a right to a drug-free community. He has a right to a warm home that his family can afford to pay the electric bill. He has a right to a good education. And he has a right to be proud of America and be taught to be proud of America. I believe so long as 11 million children live below the poverty line in this country, and that more than a half a million Americans, 533,000 Americans live on the street, that we should be ashamed. I believe charity begins at home. On infrastructure, it is a must that we improve our transportation system. I can remember in my 7th grade geography book, which has been 54 years ago, that we were concerned about our railroad system. Today, it takes 19 hours to go from New York to Chicago on a train. You can travel that same distance in China in 2 hours. People have no idea, and this is one of the reasons I think President Trump was moved, how far ahead of America China is getting. It's interesting, when you go to India, it's like going backward in time 30 or 40 years. When you go to China, it's like going to the future. The trains are going 230 miles an hour, and they're arriving every 5 minutes in Beijing and Shanghai. We have to improve our transportation system because China is literally leaving us in the dust in building roads, railways, bridges, dams, power plant nearly every week, new airports, and much more. We have to invest in West Virginia and in the American infrastructure. It is incredible to see what's going on in China and to come back to West Virginia and see our people struggling to pay a power bill. On the drug epidemic, it has to be squashed, plain and simple. It has to be cured. The cost of doing so will be high, but the cost of not fixing the drug epidemic will be fatal for our country. On regulations, I do not believe that we should pass a single federal regulation beyond what we have until we can balance the budget. And I think we should quit talking about changing the temperature of the earth until we can balance the budget. And I believe that we need to eliminate regulations every month until we get to the point that we have an economy that is growing as fast as China's, which is about 3 times as fast as ours. I'm Don Blankenship, candidate for U.S. Senate, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Don Blankenship for U.S. Senate.